Hi, this is Clive Priddle with The Current, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Olivier Sibony, a professor at HEC, the business school in Paris, of Haute Études Commerciales, and co-author with Daniel Kahneman and Cass Sunstein of the just released book Noise. Welcome, Olivier. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So let's introduce the idea of noise from the get-go here. We're talking about noise that interferes with our ability to make good judgments.
Yes, and what we call noise needs to be defined to start with, so we don't get into any confusion. We are talking about judgments, and by judgments we mean the type of thinking where we expect some consistency. When we say it's a matter of judgment, we imply that some disagreement is possible, of course, but not too much. So if you estimate what the rate of inflation is going to be next year, or if your doctor tells you, I think you have this disease, these are judgments. And that's where we expect that there is not going to be too much variability between competent people. And what we call noise is when there is, in fact, variability in those judgments.
And noise includes, but is not exclusive to, bias. Is that right?
Actually, noise is distinct from bias. And the way we look at it, error is composed of bias and of noise. And when we focus only on bias in our quest to reduce error, we forget about this other enemy of good decision-making, this other source of error that is noise. There's a very simple way to think about it. Suppose, again, that we're making forecasts, to take something very simple, and we are 10 forecasters trying to forecast next year's rate of inflation, for instance. And suppose that, on average, our average forecast is that inflation is going to be 3%, and it turns out to be 2%. So we've had an average error of plus 1%. That's a bias. We can ask, why do forecasters, on average, tend to overestimate the rate of inflation? That may have causes that we can identify, but that's a bias. That's an average error that across a large number of people, we find people tend to make. What we don't look at when we just do this sort of reasoning is the fact that if you look at all the different forecasters, they each have a different estimate of inflation. And that variability, if you only look at one of the forecasters, is going to be a source of error. So bias and noise are two distinct components of error. And when we focus only on bias, we forget about noise, and that's the imbalance we're trying to redress in this book.
Hachette,